basically, and then it runs through like up to 1 micron stainless steel screen, so you can filter out all the particulates, and then you run your stuff through a reverse osmosis, whatever filter you need to do to get rid of those little pathogens, and it doesn't clog up as fast. You know, it's much less expensive. It's a very inexpensive thing, so I could probably hook you up with him too, if you're interested. Okay, getting back to the earlier issue, I think that there's a large, I sense, out of many years of observing the situation in Israel, that there is a large part of pecking order going on in terms of the Zionist movement and the way that the Palestinians were driven off their lands. And I think that that's why the Palestinians and the Israelis and everybody, the Christians and everybody, were living pretty well together before the British said, you take over that place, as if the British had the right to say that. So if you were to say, okay, we should also be talking about letting go of that psychology, and then there'd be a lot more chance of getting a lot more Palestinians to the table as well.
I'll start by saying that I think that in the Middle East, history is the enemy of the future. But I think that your history is highly selective. Jews were slaughtered by Palestinians several times during the course of the British Mandate. The leader of the Palestinian community, Hajj al-Husseini, went to live in Berlin to work with Hitler during World War II to work on this problem of liquidating the Jews, and he was there leading political people. So I'm not so sure that there was this wonderful harmony and only the British are to blame, or that's not what was going on at all. I think there was a problem that the Jews came and did not succeed in creating a formula that left the local population feeling part of things. When the UN suggested such a formula in a partition plan, the Jews accepted it. The Palestinians said, no, there's no place in this area, in this region for a Jewish state, and history went on as it did. So I'm not so sympathetic to the Palestinians historically. I'm extremely sympathetic to them today. In other words, I don't really care how they got to where they are. I think they had horrible leadership that was not pragmatic, that was dogmatic, and they paid a terrible price for this. And I just hope that we can get beyond that, and they can learn to accept us, and we can learn to accept them, because the present deadlock only serves to support the extremists who, on both sides, who are interested in only in fomenting bad will and violence, and again, an unsustainable situation which leaves everybody as a loser. Mm-hmm. I don't want to get into historical debate, because I think that's defeatist. That's exactly where we've been stuck for a long time.
Sounds like the debate then is actually more of a Green Party type debate. You've just identified that there was class leadership in both places which was retrograde, and maybe that's where you need to work.
Right, I'm not so sure. I mean, Israel at the time, I think, was run by very proletarian kind of government. Some people say too much so. But there's no question about it that I'm disappointed in my leaders, and I'm sure many Palestinians are disappointed in theirs. And it's very, very tough. I mean, how does one reach out at level? And I think that although it's not that well defined, I'm hoping that the Palestinian democracy will in the end prove us right. Right now, I'm a little bit concerned about the Arab Spring and where it's going to lead us, but I think ultimately we have no choice. We have to, toss the dice of democracy and hope that that leads us to reasonable and peace-loving governments, and not extremist and lawless ones. Yes, please.
So I can feel your love of the creation and desire that we human beings could learn to live with it and with each other. And that, of course, is Echad, Wahad. I was interested that you said there were 7.8 million people in Israel. And
this is pre-67 Israel, not in the West Bank, excluding the West Bank.
Oh, that's not today you weren't talking?
No, it's today, but it's just in the pre-1967 Israel. It doesn't include the Palestinian state.
So inside of what borders is those 7.8 million?
The borders that existed in May 1967. Okay? I'm including and the West Bank has...
So you're including the West Bank in
Israel?
Israel?
No, I'm not.
7.8?
That's even more people.
Okay, thank you. You talked about Israel's water coming from the Jordan River when you were talking. And then that means
Historically, today less so, but yes.
Well, now the Jordan River is pretty depleted. And that includes the space in the West Bank from underneath where the Palestinians live. So I wonder, like, for you and for the Green Party, what do you say about the water coming from under the West Bank, and also from the balance, the distribution of water today in the West Bank, the proportion that comes to Israel and is controlled, and the portion that the Palestinians can use? Tell me about you and
Sure.
the Green Party.
And my position is probably a little more defined personally, because I wrote quite a detailed article on this issue called Thirsting for Pragmatism. But I'll start by saying that about 2 years ago, Friends of the Earth Middle East asked myself and the former director of the Palestinian Environmental Ministry to write a shadow treaty, a final agreement about the environment, and we did so. Here's what I think. I think that the Palestinians today do not have enough water, and this is a critical humanitarian issue, and it is a tragedy that this water issue, which is so given to a solution with today's desalination technologies, is being held hostage because of the overall deadlock in negotiations. In other words, there are a lot of disagreements between Israel and the Palestinians, and in any negotiations there will be give and take. There's no question that Israel on the issue of water has a lot to give. They had a lot to give, I think, several years ago in 1995 in the inner agreement. They held off to the final agreement because maybe that'll help them get some concessions on issues like demilitarization, or perhaps where the border is going to lie. So they said, well, we'll leave the water to the final status agreement. And in the meanwhile, the peace process fell apart. There was an intifada and a Palestinian uprising, and we haven't made progress. So there's no question about it that Palestinians, who often only receive water 2 or 3 times a week, need more water. And I think there's no question about this, and I think it's been even recognized by Israel in its treaties. The frustration that I have, and this is my frustration with my Palestinian colleagues, and like I said, I work very closely with them, is that because they're so principled on these issues, they end up shooting themselves in the foot. And I'll give you some examples. Israel has developed the least expensive systems of desalination in the world. We can now desalinize 1,000 liters of water for 52 cents. Okay, now think about that. 52 cents for water which is pure H2O, better than any kind of Polish Spring or other bottled water that you can have. It's astonishing. There's some environmental problems I'm happy to talk about, but we have now the ability to produce for very, very low costs. The city of Hadera is an Israeli coastal city and was about to build the largest reverse osmosis desal plant in the world. 120 million cubic meters, 120 billion liters of water a year, okay? About 3 times what the Palestinians get overall, okay? And they said to the Palestinians, we will give it to you as a gift. If you want it, we have a joint water committee, we'll build it and you can have it because there's international donors, whatever. And the Palestinians said, no, we want the mountain aquifer, the one you talked about.
Well, that wasn't my question.
I'm explaining why, let me explain why my position on this. And in the end, they said no, and that water the plant was built and that goes to Israel. But the irony, and this is the tragedy of it, is that 40% of the water coming to Palestinians in the West Bank is supplied by Mekorot, the Israeli water utility. Because Israel has a humanitarian obligation as an occupier, and I believe that Israel is occupying the West Bank, but to provide a basic humanitarian service, running water, and so they're doing this. So, ironically, by not wanting to be dependent on Israeli desalination, they're more dependent than ever. And this sense of, what would you call it, colonial control is exacerbated because there's no question about it, we are going to need to desalinize water. Climate change is not the gloomy projections of Al Gore. In Israel, it is a new hydrological reality. 2 weeks ago, the Water Commission in Israel issued a report, and it said that 13% drop in rainfall over the last 20 years has led to the lowest water level ever in the Kinneret Lake, the Sea of Galilee, which is the River Jordan's water basin. So if we want to really provide water for populations that are growing very fast, we have to find additional sources. And the sea is there. So we're going to have to work with Palestinians to find some sort of a balance there. And maybe if I didn't answer your question, perhaps...
My question was about the water that is coming into Israel from under the West Bank.
That's the mountain aquifer. I mentioned that, yes.
Yes.
So,
And what is the green part? And in addition, the water from those sources to Palestinian villages from which the water comes is limited by Israeli policy. So what is your position in the Green Party? What do you say about that without blaming political personalities and processes? What is your vision for the sharing of that water?
I think that, again, water is going to have to be negotiated as part of the final settlement. In the interim,
but what is your position?
I'm answering.
Yeah.
In the interim, Israel needs to provide more water to the Palestinians, period. Because if you have a population that's responsible for them, you have to do it. Now, there's a lot of things that have to be done on the other side. 70% of the water that flows in Bethlehem is lost because of leaky pipes, 60% in Ramallah. There is a huge infrastructure development which is needed. But in the immediate range, it is embarrassing for me to go visit friends in Bethlehem and know that if they didn't have a tank on their roof to collect rainwater to fill up, they would not be able to give me drinking water. I think that's unacceptable. So that's my own, it's at a humanitarian level. In the big picture, I think we're going to have to, like I said, think about expanding the pie and providing desalinized water, because the amount of water for everybody today is not enough. Under all UN standards, both Israel, Jordan, especially Jordan worse than anybody, and the Palestinians are in terrible shape. But I think it's also, we can't, remember 90% of these Palestinians have access to running water. Compare that to Romania, which has 70% more than Cyprus. In other words, their situation has improved dramatically, and still it's not enough. It's not enough. Yes, please.
I have kind of a Jewish state.
Sure.
And because, like, in this country, we're asked to take, that refugees from every country in the world come here, and the idea has always been that anyone can come here, and our religion is separate from politics. And that's been kind of a basic understanding for a long time. So I guess I can't quite understand about a Jewish state. Does that mean that nobody, if you're not Jewish, you're not welcome there? Or what does it mean?
It means if you're not Jewish, your ability to come to Israel is comparable to your ability to come to the United States if you're not American. You can come, but you have to, it's complicated. However, if you are a Jew who lives in Ethiopia, and you have been persecuted because you're Jewish all those years, as a philosopher would say, as we call them, you have a right to come to Israel. And if you are a French Jew who's afraid to walk the streets of Paris today with a yarmulke on your head because you might be attacked, okay, or as the case in London now, the anti-Semitic violence has reached unacceptable proportions. Hundreds of events where religious people, outwardly looking Jews, are attacked. If you're afraid, there is one place in the world that you can go to, okay? And with all due respect to the American immigration policy, which has welcomed tens of millions of people there, but when Jews needed a place to go in 1939, the gates weren't open. And today, if such a situation would arise, they would have a place to go. And so our feeling is that we have to offer them that opportunity. It's our responsibility. Never again will we allow a situation for our people to be slaughtered because nobody in the world would take them. And
so,
there was,
in other words, part of the identity of the proposed Jewish state would be a sanctuary.
it's been the raison d'etre of the state for the last 60
I really
years.
didn't understand that.
Yeah.
And I guess because I live in such a variegated society where we're not really supposed to really make differences between people's religion or ethnic background. Everyone is supposed to have the same opportunities and acceptance and so on. It's just hard for me to think of a state that's so specific about its